everyone. Welcome back to the center stage. Last panel session of the day. Come on down. We're going to be talking about manufacturing challenges for IVD products, which I know is really ramped up since COVID has hit, so this ought to be a really interesting panel. We have some really fantastic speakers today, and I'd like to start by introducing our panel moderator, Michael Robards, who's Vice President of Business Development for Planet Innovation. And Michael, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Lori. All right, hey everyone, how you doing? Michael Robards, VP of Business Development at Planet Innovation, as Lori said. I'm actually really happy to be here. I'm really excited to be talking about this. As we all know, the last couple of years have been kind of ever-changing and evolving in our design development and kind of manufacturing world, and in particular, trade-offs and strategies and different decisions you have to make to get those products to market, quicker and more efficiently, et cetera. So, really happy to be here with these group of gentlemen who I've all worked with and known in one capacity or other over the years. And I guess I'll start off with a quick introduction to myself, I guess, and then I'll go down the line. So Planet Innovation, I've been there fairly new to the company, but been working for about 10 years in the design and development space with various different types of kind of consultancies and manufacturers. Next to me, here on the left, we have Jeff Facer. He's VP of Engineering and also one of the founding members of Levitas Bio. We have Tyler Liebig, who's Business Line Director at IDEX Health and Science for the Fluidics. And at the end, we have Mr. Anthony Favallaro, who's Senior Director of Program Management and Technical Operations. Get that right?
Perfect. Thanks, mate.
Perfect. Okay, great. So this is going to kind of be an open discussion as a group where we kind of just want to have an open dialogue, and it's going to kind of go in three different kind of phases. One's going to focus first on kind of the front-end commercial strategy and design. So when you're designing an instrument, when you're in that more of the early stage song and dance, what changes and different challenges have we seen in the last couple of years while we've been developing all these instruments, right? Secondly, what we're going to go into is more in the kind of middle to end of phase of what happens when you're starting to transfer some of these products that you're designing in towards that manufacturing. So kind of that design transfer arena. And then lastly, we're going to talk about what's been happening in the ever-evolving manufacturing space. How do you deal with some of the supply chain issues? What are some of the challenges you've had to make in coordinating and really launching successful products? First off, I know people are just trickling in here, but kind of interested, get a hand of who is in what kind of industry. Is there anybody that works primarily in the like R&D space, engineering group? If you raise your hand, maybe, please. A couple engineers working more on the R&D. Anybody on the assay side or chemistry team here present? No chemist or senior scientists? Okay. And then anybody on the sales, marketing, kind of business development group end? Very good. Cool. Thank you, guys. So it's always good to know who's in the audience to make sure we're priming the right questions and whatnot. As we go through this, at the end, we will have like an open Q&A session. So if you guys have anything, please just write it down, hold on to it. We'd love to learn more about what you guys are thinking and what you're also seeing in the marketplace. Okay. So without further ado, we'll get in kind of that first set of questions. And again, it's revolving really around commercial strategy and designing of an instrument. So, Jeff, we'll start off with you and then we'll go down the line. Did you make any commercial strategic decisions or specific product trade-offs as a result of kind of the COVID-19 pandemic? And, if so, kind of what were some of those changes you had to do to adapt?
Yeah, it's a good question. Sounds like I have for you. The pandemic coincided with us really kicking off a major commercialization development program, basically moving from prototyping into sort of growing up as a company, commercializing our first product. Awesome timing. Being a small company, we're always listening to potential funders, and we were hearing a very strong message early in the pandemic that risk aversion was in, get something out fast. We don't know where this is going. We don't know whether the market's going to dry up for years. So what we did was we pivoted from a fairly complex, quite ambitious, high complexity product to a true minimum viable product, putting something that was enough to get some market traction, get the technology out there, prove that it's real, but a lot smaller scope than we would otherwise have been going for. So that's the main sort of high-level strategy change.
Which is kind of interesting, right? Because a lot of, especially startups, but a lot of people that are designing instruments, you get so excited about your technology, right? You get so excited about launching this product that often it's like, oh, well, we also need this. Oh, we also want to do this. We also want this extra analytics, and they want all the bells and whistles, right? But what you were seeing, to kind of reiterate, was kind of the opposite of, we've got to get into this race, we've got to get it to market fast, so how can we do that effectively, but also in a very efficient manner?
Yep, exactly. And so, we didn't just junk all the features or anything like that, but we've pushed some to a future generation. Mainly, we had to be very flexible and be brutal on scope creep. It's not necessarily unique to a pandemic. It's arguably good discipline for any company anytime, even though it's normal, or as normal as Silicon Valley ever is. It was successful in the end. I mean, within 6 months, we had a instrument and a consumable that was market ready, and we started selling. There were a lot of painful adjustments and lessons in there, but
I'm sure you also had to tame the marketing team a little bit, right? Because they always want all the bells and whistles, right? So
we did a little. I mean, that's always a lot of tension, especially in a small company where everyone wants it to be like the thing that changes the world. But we had a middle ground, and in the end, I think it paid off.
Right on. Thanks, Jeff. So Tyler, I'll hand this over to you. Same question. So on that kind of commercial and strategy and design, what kind of decisions and maybe product trade-offs were you seeing from your side? And maybe let me even start that off but just adding that, Tyler, I've known Tyler for a few years. He's got a very unique perspective in that his company at IDEX Health and Science not only helps on design and development of things, but they also have a bunch of products. So he gets kind of that interesting, perspective of kind of seeing both worlds, right? So anyways.
Yeah, thanks. And similar to what Jeff experienced, what we're seeing is just a compression of timelines right now. Is a lot of manufacturers and designers trying to get things to market and take advantage of what's going on in the space right now. And not only are the timelines accelerating, just more players are trying to do it at one time. And so we found that we've had to take on a lot more than we planned to or that we normally do during this time, keeping us all real busy. So we've had to make some trade-offs in the past where we used to be able to prioritize, choose where we're going to focus, and maybe pick the winners of who are well-funded, who has the right management team and the right personnel, and that's getting harder to predict now. So we've had to scope back some of the ways that and really sink into be candid with ourselves and with our customers and say, hey, we're really good in this area and we can do this quickly and a good path to market, but in some of these other areas, there might be a better vendor or we don't have the resources to do it. Just be really clear up front, because right now with aggressive timelines, you can't compromise on those. And some other areas that we've had to make some changes with is looking at just as these new players or as different players come into the market, there's a lot of them are, I'd say there's less experience, or some of the people who used to have a lot of experience. We're seeing the great resignation right now, and people are moving from established customers to startup and vice versa, and so we can't solely rely on the experience that these companies have on commercializing. So we've had to be very proactive to try and help and say, if this is your date, this is your critical milestone, here are some of the steps that we need to go through to get there, because it used to be in the past, if something was missed or there's a mistake, you could expedite it, and today that might not be possible with some of the suppliers and components that are available. And so we've had to do a lot of just being very proactive, maybe more than they want, to help make sure that happens. I think that was nice. I'm not sure if I had anything else there. Thanks.
No, it's pretty good. I mean, with everyone wanting to move fast and everyone having funding and everyone in the race, right, it's all about managing expectations and deliverables, right? So being an advisor and wearing that, I know you guys all do that, but that's really critical in this day and age, right? Anthony, so same question to you. So what, make any commercial or strategic decisions or specific kind of product trade-offs as a result of kind of this kind of modern era?
Yeah. So not a huge amount additional to add on top of Jeff and Tyler. I guess from a Lumos perspective, similar to Tyler on a smaller scale, Lumos is primarily focused on lateral flow. We've got two facets of the business. We've got the product side where we're doing Lumos branded product development and manufacture, and then we've also got a consulting side where we're doing contract development and manufacture. So similar to Tyler. And I guess during that sort of COVID period, the dynamic of the BD process really shifted. So we went from working with clients, going and finding clients, working with existing clients on new opportunities, to really, the clients were coming to us. So it was a pretty novel, shift, I guess. And for a small to medium-sized company, there was a real attraction to just sort of do everything, right? So there was clients were coming with, almost blank checks. So there was, provided we could say that we could, meet the timeline, that the budget constraints really were far different to what the typical BD pipeline would look like. So from that perspective, I think you talk about strategy. We took an early decision to say, well, we've got finite resources from a development perspective, finite resources from a manufacturing perspective, and we still want to continue to do non-COVID projects. So we want to keep looking after our existing clients, and then we've got our existing product range, and we don't want to take a short-term view on them either. So really, we took a decision to, similar to what Tyler was saying, to be honest, is sort of strategically select a couple of projects, pick the right horse, make sure that they tick the boxes that we're after, and focus the remaining resources that we had on that. So, I think that worked out pretty well for us. We ended up with, a pretty big project that had COVID antibody, antigen, contract development, and then into manufacturing, and then also leveraged off our, we've got a white label reader development that we developed up a couple of years ago. So, so that was sort of the strategic decision that we took, which worked out pretty well.
Nice. No, thank you. That's all good insight. And that's a pretty good lead into kind of the next section, which is talking more on, we design these instruments, right? And we have to now get it to market as fast as possible. We're saying there's a lot of prioritization, a lot of resource balancing, et cetera, et cetera. What maybe useful tools or specifically maybe, again, strategies or pivots? You mentioned yours, you had to pivot more towards design because all these companies were coming to you and wanting kind of more collaboration opportunities, right? But going to you now, Jeff, what other kind of useful tools or strategies when you're after that initial design aspect and maybe getting closer to manufacturing, where you're really trying to button down the hatches and trying to expedite and do that kind of final push?
Yeah, it's certainly been an unusual couple of years. I would say you hear a lot, have done for a long time, about design for manufacturability and design for this and design for that. I'd like to coin a new one, which is design for availability. Stretching right back into the prototyping phase, we've had to pay a lot of attention to what's going to be available down the track. I mean, simple decisions like not trying to design for something too niche is one thing, but think about what the path to manufacturing is going to look like. Think about what might happen if you have to change something, and build that in from as early as possible. Things like what sensor might be in a bunch of different cameras that let you like switch between cameras to minimize the software impact, or what stage or controller I could build in, and maybe allow a little bit of extra space around it so that if I have to switch, the disruption is minimized. Testing out your plan B early is incredibly important, is a big lesson out of that. You don't necessarily need to do full design validation or anything like that, but make sure you've done some feasibility studies early on what some of your alternatives might be. Otherwise, the impact will be huge.
Right, so supply chain, right, being one, having the foresight to understand we are still coming out of COVID, but we still are having obvious supply chain issues. So how do we design that and bake that into a program now as like a new standard until things have cleared up?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I would say in terms of disruption, 2021 has been far worse than 2020. I mean,
right.
the funding worries that I alluded to previously, I mean, that lasted all of 3 to 6 months. Now there are hundreds of companies out there, and picking up on some of the other comments, a lot of the ways to expedite and accelerate a program are just not available because everybody is already running at 100% plus. So the hiring crunch is real. If you have to spin up a new project team or something like that, it's not necessarily going to be possible. And even design houses just don't have the bandwidth to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler, over to you. Same question, kind of in that middle stage, expediting, pivot, any useful tools that you guys have implemented to kind of help that expediting?
Yeah, I had three things that come to mind, though I do like the design for availability that painfully resonates sometimes right now, especially in the electronics realm. I'll say one area tool that we've really seen pay off is investing in project management. Especially when things are as busy as they are, I usually like to invest more in the R&D side, the doers that are getting things done. But we've seen a big payback on building out a bigger project management team that interface with ourselves. And we do it's like typically fluidic systems and components. And so having them work on the various different projects, liaising with the design team at our customers has been super productive to help identify key milestones and walk back in to make sure that there's all these different pieces are coming together. And so where in the past we might have a few project managers and engineers handling others, this was just really bringing in professional project management. It just helped us a ton. And then also just being flexible in our product development process. We really pride ourselves in being able to have a good vision of design through manufacturability, but understanding, like as Jeff's describing, sometimes the goal of some of the players today is not to get all the way to manufacturability with this next design. They might need an alpha to get their next series of funding, or they're looking to get some instruments that can help with thought leaders or things like that, but really understanding what they're doing there and then accordioning our process to not remove the things they need. They are important to hit those key milestones, but also to just not have additional nice to haves that could slow things down. Sometimes the timeline is the most critical. And then the last point, simulation. Really trying to avoid iterations. So design simulations on what the key requirements are to skip, I've heard people call it a cook and look, making an iteration, design testing it and doing, but try and reducing that number of cycles. So we've worked really hard to insert ourselves early in the process. Often fluidics is at the back end, but just understanding what the critical requirements are, trying to get ahead of what those specs might be, and then doing some simulations to make sure to head us out with skipping some iterations. Those are some things and some tools we found really valuable right now.
Right. So fail fast, fail hard, kind of as you say. So
exactly,
so
yes.
Do all the modeling and all that simulation, CFD, et cetera, all as early as you possible. So you're narrowing the field to reduce the amount of cycles of design.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Fantastic. And Anthony, same thing to you. I know they covered a lot here.
They did. They're stealing all the good points. No, so I guess reworking that a little bit, really summarise it into Tyler's point around planning. When we're originally talking about the COVID projects and your normal development, when you include clinical and regulatory, 12 to 18 months is reasonably, you'd be reasonably happy with it on a normal development. Clients were just coming in, 3 to 4 months was what we had to try and turn around a product development timeline in, which is just crazy, So when you sit down at the table and try and put together a schedule that's going to, get somewhere close to that, I think what you end up coming to is just compressing, putting everything in parallel. So you end up with a whole lot of activities that are happening in parallel, which really forces, a lot more of the functional groups into the same room really early. And I think that was one of the real wins that we got out of the process. It's a really uncomfortable process doing all of that, and there's a lot of extra risk, but having those early concept project planning meetings, and then as you implement, having regulatory, clinical, usability, service, design transfer, ops, all in the room from the very beginning, and then all the way through the project. There was just countless instances where just design decisions that were being made, the selections of components, those sorts of things, were influenced by people that were coming to the table with different perspectives and help you minimise the number of iterations. So I think that that's certainly something that we already knew, but there's a real emphasis on it now in new projects as they spin up, non-COVID or COVID, making sure that we're incorporating all the right people in the room.
Right. And I'm assuming some of those, we've certainly seen it that when you compress those timelines, we still have to do the same task. You're doing some of those at risk, right? And that's the trade-off. So sometimes you're buying maybe multiple components for doing trade-off analysis in parallel, or you're launching these other different teams where they're kind of overlapping more than they normally would. There's kind of one going directly in the other, it's a low risk, but if you can parallelize it a little bit, you can gain that little bit of extra time if it's a low risk, right? Right. Very cool. Okay. Fantastic. So the next, the last kind of topic we're going to talk about is really more on the manufacturing end, and that's a good segue into that. So, manufacturing is fantastic in the sense that, by being a manufacturer, you really get fantastic insight on how the products are actually performing in the market, right? It sounds very mundane, but it's true, right? As a product developer and a manufacturer, you should know exactly how well that product fits in the market, because A, you're placing it there, but B, you should be getting all the feedback, right? Whether something's failing in the field or whether something's getting very, very well adopted, right, to certain marketplaces. So kind of the question around the manufacturing end here is, what should you expect from, kind of your manufacturer partner? More than just maybe like a reliable, supply of product. What are some of those key, things that you guys look for when you're looking for a real manufacturing partner, and what do you expect from them too as you go into, launching your product?
Yeah, that's this isn't new. It's always been a very important thing to make sure that you don't have a disjointed development and rollout process. Like, I would always be very nervous about a sort of life cycle plan that didn't have either the design team or the manufacturing team involved at some point at pretty much, or at some level at pretty much every stage of the development. Right. And I think COVID and all the hardships at the moment are really just accentuating that. There's what to do for your follow-on product for sure, but especially for a company like us, which is in the research use only space, there's always a lot that you want to improve about your product after it gets on the market. So, regular sustaining engineering, but also just upgrades, things like that. Some of the features that maybe didn't make it into the first version, you want to sneak back in. If you have to spin up a whole new project and get together a whole new project team for every change, you are going to miss pretty much every market window there is. So it's become critical that the overlap is almost 100%, from development through into manufacturing, and it's actually alleviating. Some of the difficulties you might see with that are alleviated slightly by the timescales. You're into the lead times of your manufacturing procurement by the time you've prototyped it.
Right. And Tyler, same question to you. Have you noticed, kind of being a design company, but from the subcomponent level, but also a manufacturer, have you guys expected things from some of your manufacturing partners, or vice versa? Some of your clients expected, higher than normal standards of kind of that post-manufacturing launch, applications?
Yeah, it's a good question. It might be similar to what Jeff was saying too. We've seen more than ever and recommend to our customers and people introducing instruments and this is just the best practice just normally, but it's even more so now, is making sure there's a very tight linkage between design and manufacturability and manufacturing, and making sure whenever possible those overlap. You're scaring me a little bit with your 3-month time windows you've got. Like, there's just no other way to do that. They have to be linked really tight, or you're going to run into surprises. And we encourage the customers and people we work with to do the same. It's not like in some of the old days they have a designed instrument and then go see who can make it. That just can't be done today without planning for some redesign and some iteration. And so that whatever partners we're working with or our customers we're working with, encourage, make sure there's a really tight linkage between that, not only with us at the component level or system level, but or subsystem, but at the entire instrument, make sure that's linked to avoid surprises, because you can't deal with surprises at the 11th hour right now. It's very difficult to recover when you have to make a design change at the end. And I guess one other thing I would say is, even now, with these tight time frames, we do plan for some level of flexibility. With our own manufacturing, we've had to set up even other sites that are better at dealing with some of these changes that you will see right now, that it might be that it's not making a big diagnostic analyzer that once you manufacture it, it's the same for years. Some often say, hey, we're going to integrate a new test, which makes all the tubes a little different, and being ready for some rework and some change to help these designers hit their goals. And I think that's all I have on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've definitely seen that people, we always say, bring in the manufacturers and the end goal sooner, right? Get the inside, start that process as soon as possible to minimize delays on the back end. But now more than ever with the time frames, it's like, we should have that lined up at the beginning or right there at the inception, right? And it's really, that's what we're learning is that is actually more beneficial. It's kind of the forced process, right? Everyone talks about it, but not a lot of people do it. And now it's more realistic and needed, right? More than ever. So Anthony, same to you on the back end, yeah.
Yeah, so I think in our capacity as a contract manufacturer, we're supplying product to customers, and then as part of that process, we're obviously consuming components as well. So I think that the answer to the question in both those capacities is yes. We certainly strive to be more than just a manufacturer for our customers. Within Lumos, we sort of strive to become trusted advisors to our customers, because we believe we're in the best position to be stay across emerging technologies, trends within the market from the raw component perspective, and then inform our customers as they go through their strategy process, identify new product options and menu expansion. So I think it harks back to the point that I was making earlier with the product development process. Making sure that you've got the right people in the room during planning and implementation. As part of the product pipeline, and strategy sessions, making sure the right people are in the room and having your manufacturer in there is the right thing to do, I think. And we do the same thing with our suppliers, who are also in the best position to keep us informed of emerging technologies in raw materials and components. So the best suppliers are certainly the ones that come and visit. Have lunch and learns, those sorts of things, keep you up to speed with the latest. So from raw materials through to our customers, keeping the supply chain strong and in lockstep from a communication perspective.
Right. And I'm also curious, and from your guys' perspective, is on not just in the manufacturing supply chain, but also on the support, right? I mean, we're in an area where, right, everyone's masked up, right? We're getting really good at understanding who we're talking to by just looking at their eyes, right? I mean, it's kind of a funny time we're in, but from the support standpoint, right, is at least we're feeling, I think you guys would probably agree, is the forethought of the post-market support from a serviceability, right, and supporting those kind of changes, whether it's a refresher because it was minimal viable, right, and now they want to really button down the hashes and do a really quick next gen, right? We're seeing a lot more kind of demand on that kind of back end, especially the support. Are you guys seeing kind of the same kind of features?
I would certainly agree with that. It relates to like how early you're bringing them in, but to Anthony's point, to anybody like right back at prototyping, listen to your manufacturer. They are much more in tune with the things that will trip you up in 6 months than most R&D people are. So definitely get those lessons wherever you can. Don't wait to learn them the hard way. Don't, for instance, craft a consumable out of a material that turns out to be used for vaccine vials. That's not a winning strategy in 2021. And there's usually a way around that, and knowing about it early certainly saved us many months of rework.
Yeah, same question to you, Tyler. Have you felt that need for like post-market support from you guys and a lot of your product lines and instruments?
Yeah, you have to plan for iterations. Our manufacturing team might not like it, but that's what's happening now. No matter what type of platform or device it is, there's some level of optimization, modification, and just be ready for that. Or that's what we're having to do. And yeah, we see why and what the market needs are.
And to you, Mr. Favaloro?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, same. I think with the market as it is now, there's just a huge emphasis on forecasting, planning, material, like electronics. I was in a meeting yesterday, we're talking about needing a 2-year forecast for, a circuit board. It's just amazing. I don't know, it's almost almost unplannable, right? So, yeah, that's the...
It's kind of funny, right? In the supply, it's almost like the same scenario that we had with toilet paper, right? Where it was like everyone needs it, so everyone's buying huge amounts, and then everyone's fighting over the scraps. We're kind of seeing that a lot in the manufacturing space too with product, which is good for everyone, but also has all its merits and challenges, right? So, so with that being said, that's kind of through a lot of our questions. If you guys are okay, I think I want to open it up to some people in the crowd. If anybody does have any questions. Any of the challenges and tales of the trenches here in the COVID environment. So,
Questions, comments? Somebody's got to have a good question. Arnold, give us what you got.
Hi, in today's environment with all the news regarding challenges with supply chain, boats waiting in the bay, equipment stuck, etc., what type of internal challenges and external challenges are you experiencing today and you foresee in the next Q1, Q2 into next year? Is it internal resources or other services in order for you to meet your 90-day milestones, etc.?
Challenges. How long do you have? I would say, from our perspective at least, the challenges are probably 60-70% external, and the balance is internal. Where the skill shortage has been mentioned already, and it can be overused as an excuse, but it's very, very real. You definitely want to make sure you hang on to all your existing relationships with partners as best you can. Make sure that there's project continuity so you don't have to reassemble a project team. One other thing I would say though is you find yourself making some choices that would not have flown a few years ago. The obvious ones are like risk buys and stuff, but also I would say don't be afraid to reinvent the wheel. That boat waiting off the coast may be full of some nicely integrated widget that regular design rules would say, it does 3 of my functions for me, it's already been done, I'm just going to integrate that and save myself some design time. But think about the components that are in there, know what it does, and have a plan, and maybe even prototype it to break out those functions and to put it together for yourself, because the lead time on that integrated widget just became 26 weeks, even though they had thousands in stock yesterday. The predictability is what really kills you.
Yeah, and I can add to that. I wish there was an easy answer to that. Right now it's been just brute force. We had our new hire lunch where we met some of our new hires, and we had hired quite a few procurement folks to help coordinate a lot of the stuff going on, whether it's, and right now my phone was buzzing, it's probably a text about something on PCBs. But yeah, we've had to go just do things differently. We're going up our supply chain, the vendor supplied material and components. We have to go, okay, you make this PCB for us, we need this many. Where are you getting these? How do you know how these are secure? And we're going out and buying components and paying a lot more for them, but just to get through what is kind of an unknown end to this uncertainty out there. And yeah, you get a little bit of the vibe from the toilet paper shortage that it's just, you're going to be short on this, you're ordering more of it, all all the other people who need it are too, but it's just where can you find it and you lock it up enough to keep up with your demand and incur the cost associated with it, because if you don't have it, it's better than shipping nothing at all. But yeah, I'd like an easy answer for that, but it's tough.
Yeah, I agree. I think, planning, you can only plan so much. It's just communication for mine. Jeff's talking about risk buys. There's the supply chain is just getting more and more aggressive in terms of what they're asking for. From a 100% commitment, 3, 4, 6 months out, and it's really difficult decisions to make on whether to procure the material or not. So just keeping a really honest conversation going through the supply chain and to your customer, because everyone's in the same boat, I think. So being realistic in how much product you're gonna sell, how much you're actually gonna need, and then planning accordingly all the way down, sharing in the risk.
Just adding one more thing, from a business strategy, perspective, we Plant Innovation, we were just in a recent conundrum the last couple of years of, how do we expand very quickly our U.S. presence, right? Because we have a lot of clients here, we do a lot of North American business, right? And our headquarters is in Australia. So how do we do this? We're doing that whole make or buy scenario, right? And if everyone's fighting for resources, that whole dream of building it all up from scratch might be a little more challenging. So for instance, for what we had to do from a corporate perspective, we ended up buying BIT North America down here in Southern California, which used to be CalMedTech and Source, right? And so now we've gotten a lot of that group there, but now we have resources and we have the pipeline. So it's a very beautiful thing, but it just comes with different challenges, right? So that's just kind of my business perspective on that. But thank you for the question. Yeah. Anybody else with any more questions? We have time for one more? All right.
Hi, my question is if the supply chain has problems, so you have back orders, but if down the road, customer might cancel the orders, so then we ordered more things than we need. How do you foresee this kind of problems? I mean, how to prevent it?
Clients canceling orders are never good. That's never a good thing.
I ordered a oven, like a stove. Then it didn't came like 6 or 7 months later, but I already bought another one. And I couldn't find that order because they didn't send me the right email. And I couldn't find that. And then later on, they told me, oh, your order is here. I said, oh, you never told me it takes that long, then I don't need it anymore. So you see what I'm saying? And this is just an example, but I think for our customer, we might have the same problem because we think, oh, there are so many customers that are doing the order, so we order things, like order components, but in advance. But that it takes like a half year to 1 year to arrive. And then during that waiting process, customer could cancel. Then we end up order more than we need to build.
Right. So I think the question is, has the burden of lead times, right, and some of the existing kind of challenges going on, has it trickled down to even our clients needing to cancel orders or just not getting their product fast enough? Is that kind of okay? Gotcha. Gentlemen, one of you guys want to take this one from a product perspective?
I mean, I can just come in. We will have excess. We're headed towards, I'm sure, some at the end of all this when it's all over. I'd love to have more excess inventory right now, which is a weird thing to say, but we would. We're going to have some readjustments and stuff. We just bought way too much on. I don't know of a solution to that just yet. If anyone does, I'm very interested to hear it. But yeah.
Closest thing to a solution was something that Tyler mentioned earlier, actually. And it's something that I think a lot of companies lost focus on in the last 10 years. It's having good procurement people. There's no such thing as a routine order anymore. You may have to overorder, you may have to push, you may have to try and expedite, and then maybe down the track you may have to try and defer some of it or change it or cancel some of it. It's like an example of how pretty much every activity at the moment takes a lot more very active management to stay on top of. I guess that's not really a solution, but it's it's a call out to needing the right people to it needs humans involved at every step of the way.
Yeah, and I mean, from the design standpoint, right, and like resourcing and not necessarily like product and giving you product hardware, but I think it's all about expectations and deliverables again, right? We're all feeling it in one way or another. Every product out here, every company, right, is having some kind of visibility and pain or pinch points, right? So I mean, like from our standpoint, we're just being very honest with people right off the bat and transparent as we can of like, if you're looking for A, B, and C, this is kind of where we're at right now. This is kind of what you're thinking, and this is, I don't care what everyone says, you're not going to get a product to market in 6 months at where the stage you are, right? You can't make anything out of nothing, right? So you just got to be really transparent, just complete timelines and realistic, and say we think it's here, but it could be worse or it could be better depending on A, B, and C, right? Does that answer your question? Oh,
it does say, good point. We do inform customers when we learn, if you go buy stepper motors right now, you see the lead times, we let them, we don't have orders booked out, we let people know and just, over communicate that, hey, if you want this, we need to get it in now or your lead time will surprise you.
It's been a lot of that the last couple of years. Okay, well, fantastic. Anybody else have any more questions? Okay.
Curiosity, have you seen, how are the trends going? Has the supply chain gotten any better over time, or is it still sort of how it was in the beginning? Like, what's ebb and flow been like?
From just a purely kind of supply chain perspective, what's our foresight? Do we think it's been getting better? What's the trends? Do we see some things fluctuating, or is it kind of steady state?
No, it's definitely getting harder. Definitely getting harder. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%. So, there's been a lot of emphasis, especially on the biologics of trying to design for shelf life almost, because it's a trade-off on shelf life versus that's a big impactor on some of those risk buys you're talking about. If you've got material sitting there, and there's a hard date when you can't use it anymore, it becomes a real problem. But yeah, we're certainly finding across a whole range of materials, circuit boards. That's the one that keeps on popping up. It's getting harder for sure. Yep.
Right. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Any more questions? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your guys' time.
Yeah, thank you.